Welcome everyone to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Tara.
Greetings, citizens.
This is a science fiction movie podcast. We get together, we've watched the movie, and we're going to talk about it. It's really that simple. We've had some big ones recently, but we went for something a little bit lesser known. Something that I hadn't really heard of until Tara said, hey, this was added to the Criterion channel, we should watch this random film. So we're here today to talk about Death Watch from 1980. This stars Romy Schneider, who I'd never heard of, but has an interesting backstory, which was prompted by Criterion's ominous phrasing of like her in the synopsis. But also Harvey Keitel, Harvey Stanton, and Max von Sydow, who's becoming a bit of a regular staple on the Ace between his appearance in the bonus episode of Judge Dredd, of course, and last year with
Ultimate Warrior.
Oh, and Ultimate Warriors. Yeah, I forgot about that. I was going to go straight to Until the End of the World, but you're right. So this is at least their fourth Sydow appearance. Very good.
I think this movie has some connection to Until the End of the World also.
Really?
Yeah, like the two directors knew each other and were like both brainstormed these movies at the same time, and they both got Max von Sydow to show up at the end.
That's interesting. Yes, but Until the End of the World, though, it's so goddamn long that the end is like over an hour of Max von Sydow.
Plus I think it came out like a while later.
Oh yeah, it's like another decade or so. Yeah. So yeah, so we'll start spoiler free as we always do. This is a film set in a, obviously at the time, future, where disease is basically gone. It's extremely rare that anyone catches anything that's actually fatal. They've basically got cures to almost everything. So people only die of old age, more or less, or tragic accidents, presumably as well. But dying young is such a weird and rare thing now that Death Watch is the name of a reality TV show. Although they never call it a reality TV show because the phrase reality TV show is a modern thing. As old lady Tara is dropping things.
Shut up.
Did you hear that? I thought I got that in time before your earphone back in. Oh well. So basically this movie's about Harvey Keitel, who gets experimental surgery to turn his eyes into cameras so that he can stealthily film things. He's a cameraman, but now he's obviously the stealth cameraman. And the subject of the newest Death Watch, the main character, Catherine, who is dying of a disease, he tries to get close to and secretly film her sort of final weeks, days, whatever it might end up being. And it's edited into a TV show, kind of Big Brother style, that airs, and everyone's all emotional. Honestly, probably the biggest thing I'd compare this to, it's not 1-to-1, but there's definitely some Truman Show into this in a lot of ways. Particularly there's a couple of scenes where he's talking to her, but once he's kind of like gotten close to her, and it reminded me of in Truman Show when they're trying to get him to like say something emotional, where they're like, hey, think about your dad, and not the product placement parts, but
somebody is goading them. Yeah, it's
like they want like that emotional moment where she cries or something so they can hear it and go, oh, look how sad it is, the emotion of near death. So that is the basic gist of it. Harvey Stanton plays like the TV producer who does the show. So he kind of just inherently is kind of the villainous character from the start because he's behind all this shady shit. Max von Sydow pops up later on in the film, so his role's a bit... I mean, it's not a spoiler to say that he's like an ex of the main character, but I mean, it's just kind of... He's not a relevant thing until towards the end. And that is the basic gist there. The actress who plays the main character, Romy Schneider, I have to admit, when I glanced at the credits the first time, I thought I saw Roy Schneider. And I thought, oh, we're getting the from Jaws. That's exciting. I was like, oh no, this is not him.
It is not.
Very different. But the actress who plays Catherine here, she had a very tragic end. This was one of her final roles. She died only 2 years after this movie was released. At first it was deemed a suicide, but very quickly it was just turned into cardiac arrest, so it might have been accidental, and had relations to like a kidney operation she had just previously. But she had a very tragic last few years. Her sort of early teen son died in an accident where he fell on a fence, the spike of a fence, and was killed not long after this movie came out, and that apparently she was drinking heavily after that, as one might expect. And
she also smoked like 3 packs of cigarettes a day.
Oh, and I didn't know this either, but Tara just sort of mentioned as well before we started that she also one of her husbands had committed suicide as well beforehand. So, very tragic life with a very sad ending that happened not too long after this movie came out. So, I had never heard of her. It was just Criterion in the description said in one of her final roles, and I'm like, oh, why? Okay, I have to go look at Wikipedia.
Yeah, I was looking at her credits, and it looks like she did a lot of French films.
Yeah.
She was even engaged for a while, like for a long time, to a famous French actor.
Yeah, when I looked at, I didn't really pay too much attention to the credits themselves, but she had roles going all the way back to the mid-50s, so she was clearly she was not like a fresh face in the acting realm. She had a long career, just maybe not as known.
Maybe not in Hollywood.
Yeah, not as known to like more Western. I mean, France is Western. You know what I mean? Like more Western, English-speaking territories.
Sure. And I think, I don't know if she's worked with this director before, but the director of this film is also French. So, like, you might have known her for a while. Like, she might have been a big thing for him.
Yeah. Very, very interesting cast. I'll be honest, I was never entirely sure where this movie was supposed to be set. I know where it's filmed. And it was very obvious very quickly because it was filmed largely in Glasgow, and even other parts were filmed elsewhere in Scotland. So I started recognizing streets and locations early on. Obviously, it's like because this would have been shot towards the end of the 70s, so obviously things look a bit different to what I've seen. But I started to recognize some of the old buildings and went, "Wait a minute, I know where this is."
And in case you missed it, there's a credit at the end that tells you exactly where it was shot.
This is so weird. So there's an in memory of, I think it's like a director. The director of this was either friends with or respect or something like that. So there's an in memory of so-and-so. And then the very next thing before it actually starts the credits proper, and this usually happens. See when you watch credits all the way at the end, often there'll be a section right towards the end where there'll be a little thank you paragraph saying, thank you to the city of Vancouver or thank you to whatever. All right. But for some reason, maybe they had such a good time filming in Scotland that like right at the start of the credits it says, thank you to the people of Glasgow for their help in making this film possible and making sure we could shoot entirely on location in Scotland. And I'm like, why is this at the start? Clearly someone felt strongly about this.
I guess so. Your people must have left an impact.
Apparently. So, yes. So that's just a weird thing. It's a weird thing. But that's the thing. Like, there's not a lot of Scottish accents. There is a few, but there's not a lot, and it's never very clear where they're supposed.
Yeah, I think the police officers I noticed, but that was it really.
One police officer. There's a guy playing a guitar at one point who has one line of dialogue I noticed was Scottish. I think there's maybe like a girl working at the shop who had a Scottish, but it's all really tiny roles. There's like no one of any importance has a Scottish accent.
Right. Yeah.
Which says to me that for some of these smaller roles they hired locally and that's why they have Scottish accents. But it does murky the waters where I'm like, well, is this meant to be in England and they're just shooting in Scotland? Is it meant to be, wherever? It's hard to.
It is interesting with a cast like this that you've never heard of. I've never heard of the film either before.
No. And the fact that two of our main characters are Harvey Keitel and Harry Stanton means that, and then our other lead's a French woman, or an Austrian woman. That was your fault. You said she was French before we started.
I thought maybe she was because they were speaking French in the film.
Maybe she grew up there and she is mostly French, but she was born in Austria. No, it's just weird because you have like two Americans and an Austrian who may or may be more French. And it's like, and Max von Sydow of course shows up and
to represent the Swedes. Is he Swedish?
He's known for Swedish movies, so I assume he is, but it's one of those things where like I feel like a lot of actors, or not just a lot of actors, but a lot of people who grow up in like Sweden or Denmark, you'll find that they actually were born in the one next to it and then they moved, or there's a lot of moving around.
Think she says in the movie that I think he's from Belgium.
Okay, so the character's from Belgium, but
came all the way from Belgium for this.
It took me a second to realize
that's Invisible Maniac.
Oh no, was it not Helsinki?
No, it was Belgium.
Okay.
It's burned in my memory.
All right. I'll take your word for it. I could have sworn it was Helsinki, that line. Check out the... Was that a Screams or an Ace?
That was like the first Screams bonus episode.
The first ever Screams After Midnight, the horror movie podcast, the big brother of this show.
Okay.
Screams After Midnight, that I do with Tim. The first ever bonus episode on Patreon, which you can get for $1 per month, was Invisible Maniacs. Worth that.
All right, now I don't have to do the plug.
No, there's still the full plug later. Don't even start.
Okay.
I'm capitalizing on the natural flow of the conversation here. Yes. So, so it's a weird eclectic mix of nationalities, and it's definitely supposed to be the UK, I think, but I wasn't sure if it was actually supposed to be where it was shot or if it's elsewhere. Because I think most of the prominent side characters early on felt like they had English accents. You know, for example, Harvey Keitel's wife has got an English accent. There's other characters early on have English accents, so I thought, okay, they're shooting in Scotland, but it's, you know, maybe for England, whatever.
I think it's meant to be a little bit more mixed because it's the future. Also, we don't really know how far, but we hear about other wars that I don't think have happened, and so it could just be like, it's more of a melting pot now because we're post these wars and have more open borders now, and people can cross over.
That's true. I kind of wish it explored the mythology of the world a little bit, because it is worth mentioning there's not really much visually to tell you it's the future. No. It just looks like, you know, 1979 where they shot it. That's all it is.
It has that Alphaville thing going on where it's just like, just believe us. Like, okay.
Yeah. I mean, you've got the eye tech, but the eye tech basically amounts to not seeing anything. They have a feed of what he's looking at, and that's basically it. There's not really much more to it. Some of the more interesting ideas, though, they sort of... So, because one of the themes of the movie, of course, is like the fascination with people who die, and old people who die are basically sent to old folks' homes because no one wants to deal with old people because it's weird. Like that's part of society we want to forget. So that's one of the themes of the movie for sure, and definitely one of the societal things that is different and futuristic, I guess. They don't like
it's. We see her dad at one point. He's been put. I don't think this is too spoilery, but he's been put in one of these homes where she goes to visit, and he clearly has dementia, but he's been doing things just fine. It's just he still deals with the dementia part of being old, but he doesn't have any problems. Like it's like the medication or something, the treatment that he's doing is still keeping him as a fully functioning senior citizen, but he can't. The cost is that he still has to deal with some of those symptoms of dementia.
Well, the gist I got from because she kind of argues with the doctor and sort of implies that she basically thinks this is fake. Like, regardless of what it's doing for him, it's kind of a fake life he's living right now. So, and again, I wish it went into that in a bit more detail. And obviously, thematically, that's quite important for her because she thinks she's dying, and what does that mean for her, and so on and so on. But yeah, there's some interesting little tidbits like that are kind of interesting. I mean, okay, before we get any further, we should just ask the damn question. We should talk about our feelings and our thoughts. Tara, what did you think of Death Watch?
I thought it was pretty good. I don't love it, but it does offer a lot of interesting ideas that I do like, and I like the lead character a lot. I will say I'm a little disappointed in both Harvey Keitel and Harry Dean Stanton. I didn't think they were doing their best in this film. I thought they were a little bit stilted in their acting a bit. Like, some of their lines came off really unnatural, and I don't know if it's because like it was made by a guy who I think he just made this and then all French movies, so maybe his English wasn't good or not, but
maybe.
But some of the line readings I thought were not good.
That's interesting. I mean, I wonder if it could be like, I mean, maybe as a communication thing, it totally could be that, and maybe that's why doesn't have that problem, perhaps. Or it could just be like maybe his sensibilities for like what he likes in a performance doesn't translate as much to an English speaking audience versus like
maybe
what it's like in French. I don't know.
I also thought, like, I actually really liked the score, but I thought it had very strange places where they chose to use it, because a lot of parts of the film are like scoreless. They don't have any. there's no music going on. It's all dialogue. But then when the score kicks in, it's like this really intense, like marching music that I'm like, okay, but it would show up in scenes that weren't really, it wasn't really called for, but I could see myself listening to the score on its own.
There's a couple of moments where the music gets downright horror movie sounding.
Yeah.
Which, you know, given the sort of the existential dread of like death coming for you, I suppose, kind of makes sense. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say it does anything super surprising plot-wise, but
there's a twist, I guess.
Kind of, yeah. I would say I kind of falls into the same category for me, and obviously it came out in 1980, but clearly I think this is a bit of a holdover from the experimental 70s movies where it doesn't quite completely nail what it's doing. So going back to our 70s ones where we said, oh, there's a lot of really good experimentation, but most of them aren't like great.
We both really, really liked the Truman Show when we rewatched it too.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah,
Truman Show, to make the comparisons.
Truman Show is a better movie. I don't think there's any doubt in that. Like Truman Show is damn near perfect in what it's doing. And it's not to say that this doesn't offer something a little bit different, because I think this is a little bit darker because of the death angle.
Oh, definitely.
I mean, sure, Truman Show, if you just set it later in his life, that could have been like, or change the plot to like make him think he's dying. Sure. You could have done something with that. But
there's even parts at the end of Truman Show that I thought were very much just taken right from this film.
Yeah, in some ways, yeah. But I do think Truman Show, like, everything about it is like from start to finish, like everything is like fleshed out and connected, and everything like gets to its point and does what it's doing. This movie, you know, it's about 2 hours 10 minutes long, and you do feel the pacing a little bit to take the hit. It takes quite a long time to get to the main point of the movie, which is Harvey Keitel kind of like try to get close to her, because that's really what the plot is. It's him getting close to her to witness her as she's dying without her knowing, because she agrees to be on camera as part of Death Watch for a lot of money for her, you know, her husband who she's going to leave behind. But then she does a runner, and she tries to escape, and they kind of predict this, and that's the whole point of Harvey Keitel, is he can sort of like get up close and pretend to be a friend, and obviously you expect he's going to eventually kind of care about her and feel guilty that he's doing this because it's kind of horrible, and so on and so on, and that all works. But the thing is that I think it's like 50 minutes into the runtime before we get to the point where he's like goes up to her for the first time. Not even just getting close, but the first time he even meets her properly.
Oh, it might even be later than that. It might not even be until like an hour into it, because I think it's like, yeah, the first half is just following her around, and then, well, with the news of what's happening to her, even though we see right in the beginning like the setup, but then it's just her dealing with like the paparazzi for like the first hour, and then once she agrees to it, that's like an hour into the film.
So yeah, it does feel like you could have like either cut it down significantly or use that time a bit wiser, perhaps, to
I would say cut down on the first half for sure,
expand on the second half.
Let their relationship feel a bit more I don't know, like I like that stuff, like when they're together.
Yeah, I have some thoughts on it that I'll save for spoilers, because it's, you know, getting into kind of where it goes, but there are some things I appreciate about it that didn't take the easy path or the obvious path that I think I appreciate, so that's good. I mean, there's definitely positive points, and you know, it is nice to see some of these actors, even if it's not maybe their best performance. It's hard not to enjoy Harry Dean Stanton, just as a presence. I think the movie has a lot of, again, good ideas, and it seems to really, really want to relish in the human drama of it. But there's definitely times where, you know, like I said, I was maybe not entirely sure at times where they were location-wise. There's a point in the movie where they travel, and I still wasn't exactly sure where they travel to, even though it feels like that should be a bit of information that was mentioned properly. There was a lot of fuzziness about the world that felt less like in a good ambiguous way, like I think other sci-fi movies do that, where they want to leave like parts of the world and how it works to a mystery, and it lets us like think about it and like maybe theorize and whatever. this feels just a little bit like the mythology's a little undercooked because like maybe they just didn't care about it. They went, no, it's all about the main story. Everything else is just whatever. We'll mention enough that we need to and leave it at that.
Basically, I don't mind let's just talk about the science fiction elements and not have everything shown to us. I don't need the bleeps and the bloops of the sci-fi robot world, but it would be nice to have something that attempted to look a little bit more like we were in another time. Or
that's
like,
not
even if like a thing where people wear the same jumpsuits or something.
No, but that's not even what I'm talking about. I'm not even talking about anything visual. I'm not talking about like making it more futuristic or anything like that. I'm talking about just the ideas that are already here. Like expand upon like the attitude towards old people who are dying. Expand on why the society is so mixed, that if it's not just like a convenient like this is the actors we have, we're just going to roll with it kind of thing. Like if that's an actual idea, then give me some of that world, give me some of this context for the world that we're in. And
I would like a little more reminder that we are in that world though, because like I think we get the conversation with their father and the stuff in the beginning, and then basically nothing. Like every now and then it'll cut back to the control room area, but that doesn't really strike me as too futuristic when we're there. Like I still would have liked to have something. I don't know. I'm a sci-fi junkie, I would have liked to have something like even until the end of the world, which was like a 5-hour long movie, would throw something in every hour to remind you we're in the future. Like, oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, obviously
they have eye scanners.
Yeah,
Cool.
it feels old by today's standards, but like the payphone would have like a TV screen and you'd see each other on it, and it's
right,
I love that. I love the idea that someone has the idea at some point, like, you know what? Let's put like Skype into like payphones, and we'll actually have this, because we essentially all do it now.
Yeah.
So why not? Probably too many people try to photobomb whoever's having a phone call though. people in the street.
Yeah,
right?
it would. Yeah, it's not very private.
Yeah, it would. Society would break down almost immediately. Yes, you're right. That's a bad idea. So. No, and obviously some of the other themes are kind of obvious, but the themes of death and the meaning of like your life and accepting death and embracing your end.
Yeah, there's like a loss of creativity theme going on, because people don't have to worry about things like disease and stuff. Then it's a little bit like the Twilight Zone episode where the guy makes a pact where he can't die, and all of a sudden he doesn't feel life anymore because there's no fear of death. So there's a little bit of a loss of that. She is a computer programmer, and I think the program she created writes books.
Do you know what? Until you mentioned that, I'd forget, because this is the first 15 minutes of the movie, and it's never brought up again. So yeah, because we meet Harvey Keitel first, and we get kind of like the explanation of his eyes and stuff, and there's a scene of him like walking around and just like looking at random things because he's like recording it all now, and it's like, oh, it's the hot new thing, and he's all excited.
Yeah, the first 15 minutes are very sci-fi.
Yeah, and there's narration about it. But when he talks to Harry Dean Stanton, he's like, oh hey, so we've got this person who might be the subject of the next series of Death Watch. And he explains, and because he says like a weird word, it's like computer something, like the books are called computer text or something like that. And I was like, but it's a paperback novel, what are you talking about? And I get confused until they show her at the computers that this is her job. She doesn't write novels, she inputs some key data into a computer that then churns out a novel by automatic. And it's like,
there's an AI system does everything now, so people don't have to be creative because they have a computer program does all the creativity for them.
I think it just justified your point there that we need to be reminded of that more often. That theme needs to come back, and it does come back in one sort of speech towards the end, which we'll get to in spoilers. But I think more examples of like how media and how art is created in this world now, like this, there should have been something in the middle to bring this back into the fold.
I think so. Yeah.
You're right, because I'd completely forgotten about that book thing. And it's such a specific weird thing as well, and I forgot about it. That's how, like, I don't know, behind it's left in the movie. Once you get going, it's gone.
My only other complaint about the film is that Harvey Keitel has the camera in his eye, so the whole time you're watching him, you're like, sometimes he'll move like super fast. Like, dude, that's gonna be hard to watch. That's not gonna transfer well. Like, Why aren't you looking at her while you're having the conversation? Because it's just gonna have the ocean now instead of her in the scene. Like, he's a horrible cameraman.
He's going for the cinematic, like the pan from the ocean to her as she's talking emotionally.
But he doesn't. He goes like this.
I know. He doesn't address, like, his performance maybe should have incorporated it more. But they do address it in the control room when they're getting the footage. They do mention occasionally that, oh, that shot was a bit blurry because he moved too fast. They do kind of mention it a touch. Yeah. But, yeah. I get what you're saying, though. His performance could have embellished that and kind of...
Yeah, he should be, like, staring at her while she's having this emotional moment instead of looking back and forth from the beach to her or looking down. Like, don't do that. That's a horrible shot.
Yeah, and it says something about, you talk about this loss of art because no one, like, fears death. Like, the idea that the one kind of art they have is exploiting people who are dying, and that's the only way they can feel anything from art is to actually find someone who is going to die and exploit that for their own emotion. So super interesting. And yeah, it's worth mentioning, yes, it's effectively reality TV. We talked about it with Truman Show, how it kind of just predated most reality TV. But this really predates it. This is like way before. I wasn't joking at the start when I said...
their channel station is called NTV, but because people's accents, it sounds like MTV. But it does predate MTV.
It does, yeah. It's because obviously, I think if this movie was made after MTV, they would have picked a different name because they wouldn't have wanted that confusion. But because it predates MTV, NTV seemed like a fine idea at the time.
Right.
Did that sound the same in my accent?
Yes.
Okay. And
you tried really hard.
N for Norris, as in Chuck Norris.
Yes.
Not M as in metal, as in Full Metal Bitch.
Nice.
I found some. Okay.
That's my call sign.
You wish.
I know. It's so cool.
So yeah, I mean, I think we could probably dive into like the rest of the movie and spoilers and stuff. So I will take this time to thank our Patreon producers for the month of January. I have to think about that. Thank you to Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Short, Borden Now, Al Treisman, Christopher Moy, Brett Williams, and David Brown. Thank you to you all. You are Patreon producers, which means they are $20 or more over at Patreon. And Tara is going to tell you all about Patreon right now.
That's right. If you enjoy our reviews, please check out our Patreon page. It's patreon.com/MildFuzzTV. And if you donate as low as $1 per month, you will get access to bonus episodes, including our Max von Sydow starring Judge Dredd, which is our first one that we did.
Oh, also, minor guest star, Sylvester Stallone's also there.
And unfortunately, Rob Schneider is too.
Unsung hero. Unsung hero of that film.
Ugh. Yeah, check out our opinions. I think they differ slightly.
That was comedy, all right. Just don't make that sound like I was being serious there, right? There's no need for that.
And if you donate $5 per month, you'll get access to this show one day early, but some other shows you get a week early. So may be beneficial to you to check it out. Thank you.
Yes. You can also support us for free simply by hitting the like button, subscribing, all that good stuff. Helps out a lot. YouTube really cares about it, so therefore we have to care about it.
That's right.
So full spoilers then from this point on for Death Watch. And I almost said Death Wish, and we were just talking off camera about how we keep almost accidentally saying Death Wish.
It's super close.
Yeah. So no, I think one of the first like sort of subjects I want to tackle in spoilers, which is something that is briefly explained at the start, but I don't think they explained it well enough for me, in the sense that I never quite got exactly what would happen until it actually does, which is this camera implant in Harvey Keitel's eyes. So the opening scene's like this close-up of his face, and there's a doctor talking to him and explaining that, okay, have you been practicing sleeping with your eyes open because he can't sleep with his eyes shut anymore? Like this tech, if he doesn't have light in his eyes like constantly, like if he goes like more than what turns out to be later, maybe like a couple of minutes maybe, then he'll just go blind. And I don't know if that threat of him, like, because later on when he's like arguing for like a certain bed in like the church with all the homeless people, or he's arguing for the light to be turned on He says that he's just scared of the dark because of like some PTSD from like a war he fought or something. And I never got that. That's how serious it was. I knew it was because of the camera. I knew it was more to do like something to do with like, oh, he needs light for the camera, right? Because otherwise it'd just be dark. But
yeah, it would be a bad shot.
Yeah, but I never quite got from that opening scene that he would just straight up go blind if it, and admittedly the movie kind of undersells it a little bit, even though it's kind of tragic when it happens later in the movie. And it's probably one of the best scenes in the film actually, because he's like saying, hey, like put the flashlight in my eyes, and he says it like 3 times and she's already doing it, so you know he's went blind and he's not realized it yet. And it's kind of like, oh, that was actually a well handled moment direction wise.
Yeah, a lot of there's a lot of emotion coming from him too. It was a pretty strong like performance in that scene for sure.
Yeah, and he's in like the cold shore of like a northern Scottish beach, so he's miserable right now, I can tell you. There's those screams are real. Yeah, brisk water there. So like that's a really great scene, but I don't know, like I wasn't feeling this threat throughout the film that he could go blind if he just doesn't do the right thing.
Honestly, I thought it was just the PTSD stuff. I did not realize that would be an effect of the camera.
But they undersell it a little bit though, because as we mentioned, like disease and stuff have basically been wiped out. There's nothing like that anymore. And afterwards, when he's blind, he very quickly just kind of says, "I'll be okay. They'll fix me up. They know how to fix this." And he's probably right. Like the context of the world that we've seen, what little we have had, implies that yeah, they probably can just fix him. Yeah,
seemingly they can fix almost all ailments.
So, unless whatever they did to his eyes means it can't be fixed. Which I mean, if that's the case, they should have mentioned that to make it feel sadder.
Right. Maybe he's just really upset that he can't finish filming the show.
Well, no, because this comes right after he's like started to not fall in love, and I think this is like one of the things that I appreciate about the movie is that he does kind of he falls for her, but not in like a. And there's a joke a couple of times because at one point, like because they're staying like, for some reason they travel like homeless people like across the UK, and I don't know why necessarily.
People on the run,
staying off the grid, I guess, but. At one point, when they're near the shore, right, when they're almost at the destination, because she wants to go visit this old husband/boyfriend, Max von Sydow.
I think husband. They share the same last name.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, husband. And they're at like this little like I don't know, fisherman's house or something, like next to the water. And there's like one bed, and she says something like, "Oh, like I want to like sleep close because I think we should share the bed. We're adults, but you know, nothing." Fun.
No funny business.
Yeah. And he kind of smiles. Oh, sure, no fun. Oh well, that was exciting. But and it's a little joke. But honestly, the movie's arc for him is more about him realizing that how much he kind of like wants to actually try with his wife, because his arc, like, and it does it with a really sort of on the nose bit of dialogue. But to be fair, it does kind of work in the context because we have the wife narrates a lot of the movie. Well, that's to say a lot. Every so often, there's a bit of narration, right?
And she's clearly talking about him.
Yeah.
I actually thought that was a bit strange, the narration.
It kind of told you that she was going to be at least like aware of the whole story by the end, so it kind of implied she was coming into it by the end, I suppose.
It's almost like the movie's trying to tell you that, you know, he's the one being watched or talked about, and like maybe is being watched to die.
It felt really ominous in a way that the way she talks about that first day, because when he's walking around at the start of the movie with these new camera eyes, it's like that first day he said he just walked around, didn't even know where he went, he just walked somewhere over and over, or, you know, and it sounds really ominous, like, oh, this is going to lead to his death, but it's actually the opposite, because at the end of the movie it seems like him and his wife are going to rekindle, and they're going to like, because the movie starts off they're estranged, like he doesn't live with her, we never see his kid, but they have a kid, we hear that they have a kid. But he comes to see her and he gets mad at her. He tries to give her money because he's got this promotion with his new eye thing, and she's like, oh, you got a promotion, you know, what is it? And she says, oh, is it a new toy? And he gets really upset at her, and it's like, it's like she's belittling his work, and he gets really mad. And it's not it's later in the movie, that's what I talk about, the on the nose line of dialogue that shows that he's kind of had his arc, is that when he's blind and he's sitting like making small talk with Max von Sydow, because he's blind before they get to him, right? So he never meets him without, you know, his blindness, and he's sitting there talking to him, and he asks him about, you know, what was it like getting the eye done, you know, did you, you know, were you scared or whatever? And he kind of just responds like with a sort of like more, you know, nuanced like you know, tone and voice, and just says, you know, it was the toy to end all toys or something like that. It's just you know, he says that, and it's him acknowledging not so much that it is a toy, but that his attitude towards it, and that's why his wife phrased it that way. He kind of acknowledges that he kind of jumped into this, and he's always chasing something, and so there's enough there to give you the arc.
Yeah, like it seems like he was more invested in his work than it was his family.
Yeah, and the idea of like, and that's kind of the theme of the movie, right? Is that getting close to death, it makes you realize what you have and what you should cherish, and so on. The simple, good old stuff. The darker side of it, of course, is that Catherine, it turns out, was never dying. This was all a really horrible thing that Harry Dean Stanton did. He wanted to make someone who he thought might be interesting think she was dying, and then film it, and then reveal later that, oh no, you're not dying, you're fine. It's actually the medication the doctor's given her for her symptoms that are making her act a bit sick and crazy at times. But she chooses to OD at the end of the film and kill herself. Like that's her ending. It's a really dark ending for her character.
Yeah, she says it's the only thing that like she still had a choice on, and she wanted to do it to get back at Vincent, who's Harry Dean Stanton's character. Like, this is the only way that I can get back at him. But it's a little confusing because at the end of the film, nobody really knows that she's dead except for Max von Sydow, because he hasn't confirmed it or anything. Maybe they suspect. But then Terry, I think her name was Terry, the wife of Harvey Keitel, says like, "Oh, he's done. He's already done." Like, Tracy, yeah. He's already done. Like, don't bother trying to get your revenge because he's done.
Yeah, all this secret following of a person across the country as they do all these things has eventually got him in trouble. Yeah,
she seems to die for. I mean, I know it's a ballsy move to just let her to kill herself, but she seems sort of to die for no reason. I don't really love the ending, to be honest.
I kind of read it in a way here that I think she says it's for the revenge, or it's like how to get to him, or it's her choice, and that she has agency in this choice. I kind of took it as, admittedly, that this is more about, again, showing how evil Vincent is and like the consequences of what he's actually done here. But this idea that she made such peace with that she was going to die, that upon finding she wasn't, she'd already let herself go. She'd already let her head, like, she wasn't relieved when she found out that it was fake. Maybe she didn't believe, because she said Sydow hears it in the phone because they're coming, and they tell him over the phone she's actually okay. Just stop taking the medication. She's fine. Like, that's what's causing everything. So you could argue she doesn't believe him, because I was thinking that maybe one of the most interesting talking points is like, why did she choose to do this? Like, she says it's to get back at Vincent, but it doesn't really.
It doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't really work for me, that reason. So, and especially since everyone is like, well, he's already done for anyway. So she died for, like, her death doesn't end him either.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely will. I assume it'll make it worse. Like, criminal charges for driving this woman to suicide might definitely.
Well, not just get back to him, but also probably stop any like future voyeurism into.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
This subject, but yeah, I don't know. I wish it had a bit more impact, or something that was a bit more clear. Just because, I mean, she chooses to kill herself, and I agree. Like, I also had that thought, like, well, she's already accepted death at this point, and she's done the things that she wanted to do to live, and maybe she's ready for it, and this is just her decision now.
Yeah, she left because she left her current like boyfriend / husband. I guess it was just boyfriend.
Yeah, there's like a line in the movie where they were looking for him, and I guess he was caught like sleeping with another woman when they found him, or something.
He moved on quick.
Yeah.
She's not even dead yet. She left. Well, she left him with like the half of the money that she got for accepting the thing.
So he just went on a bender, huh?
I guess, yeah. He's at that kind of like shanty marketplace that she sort of disappears at, and he's just sort of like making small talk with this woman. And I don't think he's necessarily with her, but like just the idea that he's just going to start exploring and seeing who he can talk to, and yeah.
I mean, he seemed to, like, in the beginning of the film, like, he was like, oh, these people came by, and just so you know, like, they want to put you on TV. And she right away is like, so how much money did you ask for? Like, I know you want me to do this for the money.
Yeah, he tries to play.
He guilts her, like, well, when you're going to be gone, like, what am I supposed to do? Like, this is for us.
He does try to pretend he doesn't want it for at least a minute. He does. I mean, obviously he clearly does, but he tries to pretend that no. Of course I don't want that.
I told him no. Like, yeah.
But of course she eventually does, and she has like because she says to Harvey and Stanton when she eventually agrees to do it, she's like, okay, but I want like 2 days to myself before all this starts, right? So I want 2 days of privacy and whatnot. And he's like, sure. And then she fakes like having like a seizure to see what he does, and he like, immediately calls in cameras and stuff. He's like, send in the camera crews, we got footage here.
Right.
And she snaps out and goes, aha.
Also, like when she gets the diagnosis from the doctor, she's already being filmed.
Yeah, they've got like a two-way mirror, and because Harvey Keitel's not met her yet in person, but he's actually standing behind the mirror with Harvey Dean Stanton. It's like, this is the subject, and this is.
I was a little bit confused if the doctor knew what was going on, like if he knew that this was going to be fake.
No, he definitely did, because later on in the film, he's constantly guilty, and mentions that so he kind of like, I don't know if he came up with what the medication is or whatever, but he's in the whole thing.
It just seemed like at the last moment, when we see him, he's all of a sudden like, she's okay, I made a mistake or something. I thought it was just like he suddenly realized that she was okay.
No, I think this is someone else
like
that Vincent
went and checked the facts again.
Yeah, I think this is someone else that Vincent corrupted and like got convinced to do this.
I think that's darker, and I think that's better.
Yeah. I think that's the case, because it makes the everything else kind of click together. So one of the things we were talking about earlier is the idea of art suffering, and that's why this is the only kind of emotional response that anyone has for anything, because everything's just created by algorithms. And the sad part is that now that I'm talking about this, I'm like, I do kind of feel like movies in a weird way are more and more it feels like the mainstream movies are kind of leaning towards like and I enjoy the Marvel movies and I enjoy stuff that comes out.
There's a formula though.
There is a formula.
You can just like type in, okay, these character names, this is the color that they wear. These are their ages. Go.
There is, we don't really talk about an algorithm. We talk more about how some movies feel like by committee, and it feels like there's a kind of a winning formula that they're kind of settled on in Hollywood for big budget stuff that doesn't get altered too much. So I do think in a metaphorical way that there's some truth to this in a weird predictive sense.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's still wonderful indie stuff being made, and there is still chances being taken elsewhere. But there's an argument. Even video games are doing the same thing. Where all the AAA video games are either the open world collectathons, or, and as much as I love the third person Naughty Dog style narrative, emotional, even God of War, which is great, kind of copied the Naughty Dog formula to an extent. And then other games have done that too, and I love them. But there is definitely a lot of genres are disappearing because only these 2 or 3 things are successful, so we're just going to keep doing these 2 or 3 things. But the conversation that Max von Sydow has, where he talks about he found the one copy of this piece of music from all these people who were being killed, all these musicians who were being killed. I can't even remember what the war or what the context was of the story. But it was people
I don't know. He said he survived like 700 years though.
Oh no, it was a Scottish thing. That's right. Yeah, it was because it was Robert the Bruce went to war not because it was for noble reasons, because he wanted to have certain music played at something, and the story was kind of murky, right? And for anyone who said,
but I mean, when it's said by Max von Sydow, it's very interesting.
Yes. For anyone sitting at home going, why doesn't Peter know this is Scottish history? Why should he know this? Look, we never actually did Scottish history in school. We did World War One, we did World War Two, we did the Cold War, we did Rise of Hitler,
and you
Nazis.
Watched Braveheart.
We may have watched Braveheart once, which is very factually all over the place and not even close in most places. But but it's but he talks about how these musicians were being hunted down and killed. So to hide the fact that they were composers and musicians, they were burning their music sheets. And the one that survived was hidden, and he found it. And yeah, the kind of the context being is that this wonderful music that he, as he points out, some of the music techniques in this piece are centuries ahead of their time. These are modern techniques that are being used in this music, which at the time would have been blowing people's minds because it was much simpler.
Yeah, it sort of has a Fahrenheit 451 metaphor.
Yeah, a little
in
bit. A little bit.
Or Alphaville. Alphaville has that same kind of sort of theme where, like, as we get more advanced, we lose creativity, or the things that we lose passion for the arts.
I mean, I don't know
because
if
other things are automated.
I don't know if it's like a direct thing to this, but I do wonder if there is maybe a statement here about like the merits of someone who is an artist creating art by having a message through a piece of work that they create from start to finish, you know, whether that be a movie, whether that be a book, a song, whatever, versus the trashiness of something like reality TV, where you're just taking people and prodding them into situations that might get a real reaction, because that'll create a reaction in the audience. Like, and again, not that was as common, not even close to as common when this was made, but I do wonder if, like, at least looking through it through a modern lens, I can see that now.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, definitely.
So.
There is that one scene in the film where Harvey Keitel is getting supplies, and he asks, I think it's like the first day that the show airs, and he asks the girl working, like, why she watches it, and she says, because it makes me cry.
Yeah.
Seemingly like they don't really have a lot of things that give them emotion anymore. And when there is an example where I think he's reading from the books that the computer writes, and it is just sort of nonsense. Like it's just very generic romance novel. I don't know what you want to call it.
Yeah,
it's a very like Stephanie Meyer's adjacent.
Yeah. Are you saying that Stephanie Meyer's books could be churned out by an algorithm? Shh. I'll tell you this though, 50 Shades of Grey, from everything I hear, was basically just a search and replace from some Twilight fan fiction, from what I recall.
Yeah, I've heard that as well.
Yeah. No, I think maybe you could argue that, again, it's not like as in your face in this movie, but taking what we're just talking about here about the art and the feelings and the emotion and what that being missing, you can almost say, oh, it's almost, you know, you say Fahrenheit 451, I'd extend that to Equilibrium. The idea that Harvey Keitel's arc for this movie, and again, it's a lot more downbeat and a lot more grounded, but the idea that he finds humanity again, so the idea of him gaining sympathy for his subject is like, oh, she's a person with feelings and emotions and we're exploiting her. And
well, yeah, I mean, one of the reason he goes blind is because he starts watching the show and he starts crying and he gets really emotional from watching it, and he's late, and so
it's dark. Yeah,
it gets too dark, and he I don't know what happens with the flashlight. I guess he just went too long.
No, that's important, because he actually makes a choice. He actually, in a moment of like feeling guilty,
yeah, I guess
he gets mad.
He does it on purpose.
Yeah, he kind of makes a choice and then immediately goes, shit, maybe I was a bit short-sighted, no pun intended. Throwing my flashlight away, because I think because he has a moment where he's so mad at himself for being part of this that he throws the flashlight away because he's mad about what he's done with his eyes, and then like obviously like 30 seconds later he's like, shit, I'm going blind. I need to find the flashlight.
Maybe he really does have PTSD for like the war thing, so like now I have to face this fear because I've made the decision to go blind.
Yeah,
I'm not ready for it.
And it's off camera actually, where he's admitted to everything, like because it comes next time we see him with her, he's basically apologizing and saying for what he's done and being part of it.
Right, he's just like, so are you still there? And she's not responding, and she still doesn't respond. She just eventually makes sounds of walking away, so he knows she's still there. Which
is a good scene, I think. I think later on as well, like after she's like taken the pills and seemingly died, he's been like he's napped out in the front. He's like on a chair outside. And he wakes up.
He can finally sleep.
Yeah, he can finally shut his eyes. Yeah, and he wakes up and he's like, "Hey, Catherine, you there?" And there's like no noise for a bit, and he starts to get agitated. And then eventually, because Max von Sydow was standing there the whole time, and eventually says, "No, it's me," and he breaks the news that she's dead. And it's I do like the emotional reaction, because obviously Vincent arrives in a helicopter, and he's brought Tracy, he's brought Harvey Keitel's wife, and she even points out before they even board the helicopter, she says, "You've brought me because you know you're scared of him. Like you've brought me to calm him down because you know that my presence will neuter him."
He's probably seen Bad Lieutenant. It's very scary in that film.
I'll bet, because Nick Cage is pretty scary but entertaining in the the reboot of it.
I have seen that one as well.
Yes. Shoot him again. Why? He's dead, but his soul's still dancing. I love it. movie so
It's
much.
all that crack.
Oh dear, his new movie looks terrible, but I still want to see it. I still want to see this.
It looks bad.
Oh god, Nick Cage, he can be both like the best thing and the worst thing, like at the like flip of a switch. It's incredible. But no, I like at the end that when Vincent comes up and he's like, oh, you know, is she okay? And Sydow breaks the news that she's dead, and he tries to get in to see, and obviously like, oh, does he want like a shot? Does he want to get footage of her dead body for the show, for the ending? And Sydow's like, leave or I will kill you. Like he just, and then Keitel, when he realizes, because you know he feels his wife and his wife's there, and she's Tracy, and he's like, is Vincent here? And he's blind, but he goes swinging.
He goes straight to choking him.
Yeah, I do kind of like the reaction that both of these people, because I like the touch that she's such an interesting and like good person and a good presence in their lives, that she's made this new friend out of Harvey Keitel. She has this old husband friend, of course, of Max von Sydow, but this idea that both of them are willing to kill this bastard who's exploited her.
Yeah.
And the idea that both someone from her past when she was younger, but also someone now, even in her last days, someone who was to begin with against her and like kind of manipulating her and been part of that system. So it kind of like it tells you about, it sort of like builds her up as being this really not important person, but someone who affected those around her, had an influence on those around her, and caused, you know, people cared about her because of who she is. So yeah, because you know, the movie ends, it's a really weird freeze frame moment. Actually, it freeze frames like a bit too early, but
I think so too.
but the movie ends with Harvey Keitel turning to Max von Sydow and saying, hey, I would like to introduce you to my wife Tracy, and it freeze frames.
Yeah. I did think that was a bit odd as well.
I'm dying. Please continue.
Actually, I watched the video not that long ago about like the trope of the sick girl, and how like so many of these films like Sweet November or The Fault in Our Stars, where like it's about the girl who is dying but has a love of life that no one else can see or appreciate, and so it always brings out like the best of the cynical guy who's, and I have to say, like, I don't think this one follows that trope. Like, from the description that you just said, it sounds like it does, but she's pretty cynical, like, throughout the whole thing. Like, she's not loving life. She's just, like, saying, you know, this world sucks.
I think she's more interesting because she has this positive, people fall for her in friendship and in love, but she's not like this loving life character. She's a cynical bitch, basically. And
basically, yeah.
Yeah, but she's a cynical bitch that you would get to know and care about, and you know, it makes it feel more real. So, but yeah, the freeze frame is really
weird. It shows you the world for what it is, which is not, you know, rainbows and unicorns all the time.
But arguably is more attractive if you have half a brain cell. So, But I think that moment, though, the idea that he's going to introduce his wife, the fact that he just straight up says, "This is my wife. I want you to meet her because she's also a good person." And the brief time I've met you through Catherine, you seem to be a nice person. This is just him saying, yes, we're making this work. My marriage is going to work, damn it, because you know, that's what it means. But
I'm over the toys.
Yeah, if freeze frame's just a bit too quick.
I think so too. Yeah, it feels, it's a bit jarring.
It's a bit
odd. And they go straight to the thank you to the people of Glasgow.
Yes, thank you, Scotland. You have treated us well. Yes, you're welcome.
I do really like our main character, though. I think she was really, really good in this film. I thought she was probably the best part.
Yeah, you made me worried that next time I watch me and Earl and the Dying Girl, that I'm going to be looking at it through the lens of that trope. But I do think
it's there. Same with that one that we hate, Garden State.
Oh yeah. But me and Earl, the Dying Girl is a fantastic movie and has constant reference to Werner Herzog, so it can't be bad.
I think in the video they do acknowledge that movie kind of breaks the trope. But
good.
Well,
again.
It's been a while since I watched it. I haven't seen that. I haven't seen the film. Like, but I don't think it was on Looper or something. Yeah. I don't know. It was something that popped up. I'm like, okay, I'll check this out.
Because I love that movie, and I think that's a very interesting, because it's coming of age and they're all teenagers, so it adds this extra sadness to it because she's only 17 or whatever. But it's it's interesting. It's about dealing with death and stuff, and but it does have some of those elements of, like, changing the characters around her because of her influence. But I think you always have to do that to some extent, otherwise, well, it's a sad story because the character didn't affect anyone. And,
sure.
They were effectively meaningless.
Right.
But that's a great movie. I recommend Me There, the Dying Girl. Not sci-fi though, of course, which is what we're talking about here, which is using a Truman Show-like device to kind of do something different with it. So it adds in these themes of exploitation, these themes of voyeurism, and these themes of we have lost the ability to create art, so we instead try to force it into people by exploitation. And I think we've said in a couple of ways how that kind of relates to media now, not as extremely obviously, but I think there's a couple of things we've said about reality TV or how movies are a bit formulaic that kind of. And if people were, I want to talk to someone who was into movies in like 1980, and if they thought movies were formulaic then, because we look at the 80s with this like, oh my god, there was so much creativity, all these new things that, I mean, now they're trying to do like all these reboots of, but they were all original
or
in the
like
80s.
Sequels 30 years later.
Yeah.
Right.
So
yeah. There's also a little bit about our obsession with watching death too. I mean, this is something that's been around for a while. When we watch TV and movies, like we people are more we like watching death. We like watching things we don't want to experience.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of horror movies. I mean, I love a good head explosion, if nothing else,
Yeah. I mean, sometimes that can be a little too real in film. Like,
of course, yeah.
I mean, there's the one in 1917, which was like you watch someone die slowly, and you're like, I hate this.
Do you know,
I hate this.
I was
scene.
worried for a second you were going to pick something that was going to be like, wait, Tara, you can't just start spoiling deaths in movies. But it's a war movie. Okay, it's not a spoiler. It says a death in 1917. You're fine.
Yeah, in the film 1917, there's a death that you watch very slowly, and you're like, oh, this is hard. Like, I don't want to watch this anymore.
Yes.
But versus like, Jason X, where Jason murders a woman in coolant fluid in space. Like, yeah, this is very different.
Yes. Wonderful, wonderful stuff. So I think it's definitely an interesting watch, and I'm glad to have found it and like sort of seen this other film from this era where, they experimented with these types of ideas. But it does also feel like maybe they were holding back a little bit from the actual science fiction side of things. And again, I mean, I know you wanted to see like beeps and boops and lights and
I don't have to.
And that would be fun. Don't get me wrong. Like
just a nice reminder every now and then. That's all.
But I think even just exploring the mythology they've set up in the world and using the science fiction ideas a little bit more consistently would have been nice for me. But it's not a bad watch, and it's some interesting cast members, and ultimately
it was fun to like find something that you didn't know existed.
Yeah.
We have a master list that we're working from, but like this one's not on there. It's just something that popped up like, hey, this exists too.
And it's not, I wouldn't say it's good enough to be a gem. It's an interesting, one of the things I always talk about with old movies is that we tend to see a lot of the great old movies first, so we think of old movies being better, because the ones that stand the test of time people still bring up that we get to first is because they're generally good. And sure, every so often you'll see one that you disagree with. Maybe one doesn't work for you, like you see Blade Runner and go, this is a bit dull, but for the most part, the ones that stand the test of time you have a higher chance of liking because it is the good stuff. Obviously, being movie fans doing a podcast and we're digging deeper, we want to see weirder stuff, we start to find the stuff that's just a 7 out of 10, right? And I'm not saying that's what I'm rating it, but I'm saying, there's so many movies that we rate now that from new films that are 60s and 7s. People don't talk about the 60s and 7s from the 70s and 60s, right? They talk about the 9s and the 10s. They talk about the masterpieces and the classics and the big extravagant films. No one's talking about...
Yes, our 70s months have been very enlightening for me.
No one's talking about the movie that came out, did okay for a weekend, and then no one talked about it again.
ZPG.
Yeah. So,
that was a good film.
Yeah, and sometimes we find gems, but then sometimes they're just like this. They're all right. I wouldn't have done, if I saw this in theaters, I'd be like, yeah, that was a decent watch. Maybe not something I'm going to rush back to. But that's okay.
Probably tell your family about though, because it was filmed in Scotland.
Sure. I guess. But yes.
This one doesn't have the under the skin effect.
If it came out now, it would, like, because I'm pretty sure World War Z did like bonus numbers in Scotland just because like the Philadelphia scenes were like actually shot in Glasgow, which I remember because when I was walking through going to uni at the time, like it's amazing that this is cheaper than just shooting in Philadelphia, but clearly it is. But they actually had to like put up like American style traffic lights because they're different, they look different. So yeah, you know. It's funny. It's funny watching that movie and getting, because that movie's not that good, so it's like the most interesting part if you're Scottish is like, oh hey, this is totally the middle of Glasgow and they're pretending it's Philadelphia or whatever.
I mean, it's not the worst, but it should have been, according to like the behind the scenes stuff. Oh yeah, is probably more interesting.
I actually don't mind the last like half hour. I think the last half hour where it's just like a sort of stealthy zombie movie in a lab. I like that bit alright.
There's a lot of rubber zombies though.
Yeah, the CG horde of all the climbing and stuff is like, someone thought this was so cool when they wrote it down, and I just think it looks stupid. So go away.
All right, let's wrap this up.
Oh yeah, we're rating. All right, what are you rating? Death
7
Watch.
out of 10. I think it falls into the category of what we've been watching in our 70s months, which tend to be a lot of sevens, like cool concept, some good stuff, some not so good stuff. I'm glad I watched it.
I think the pacing in the first act dragging on for quite a long time before it got to kind of like where the plot really started to get going, I think it means I'm going to be just a touch harsher and give it a 6.5.
Okay.
But yeah, work out in the same ballpark. It's, you know, that's what it is. So there you go. If you made it this far into the review, put the words Jonesy, because Harry Dean Stanton's there. I can't think of anything from this movie that was notable. Jonesy's the word. Tara's going to pose for the thumbnail.
I am.
So here we are. 3, 2, 1, pose.
My death watch.
Okay, yes, binoculars. I get it. Yes. She's a peeping Tom.
Whoa.
That was a Back to the Future reference. Thank you very much.
Yes.
That was good.
I got it.
So,
what's coming up next time?
Well, I was actually just before that. I glanced at the IMDb reviews now, the user reviews, just to see if there's anything interesting. Especially since I figured out last time that I can filter to the 1 stars because it's a tend to be funnier. But interestingly, the first couple of reviews here for this are so early. There's no rating out of 10 because I don't think IMDb had that yet. Yeah. It's like early 1999 and stuff. Unless some people just didn't bother rating, but I don't see why you wouldn't. That's what you do at IMDb. What else are you going to do? Honestly, there's only 24 reviews compared to the hundreds of some of the films that we look at. So clearly this is not a heavily watched movie now.
It has a Blu-ray release though.
It does, yeah. Shout Factory put a Blu-ray out. You know, but there's a few sort of, you know, hidden gems. There's quite a few 6 out of 10s and 5 out of 10s. So it feels like some actually skew towards our kind of general feeling. I don't think there's anything super funny here, honestly. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the gold. I'm looking for the, you know, if it's a good movie, I'll look for the 1-star reviews because those will be funny. If it's a bad movie, I'll look for the 10 out of 10s because those will be funny. I'll be
curious for next week's 1 out of 10 reviews.
Oh, that's true. That's true. Because next week, of course, it's not technically episode 100, but the way that I number this, where it's the movies like as test subjects. So test subject 100 is going to be now. It's Tara's favorite movie, and the reason for that is because my favorite movie is naturally happening a little bit later this year for another reason. But Tara's favorite movie, of course, is 2001: A Space Odyssey. So that's right. What we're going to be talking about next week. There's danger that the dissecting of that movie might be one of our meatiest yet. So just
well, don't promise anything now. We might be having an off day. You don't know.
I don't know. I get excited talking about that movie.
It is Kubrick, and it is the greatest movie of all time. So.
I'm coming with a thesis.
I have my drunk girl thesis that I've been working on over the years.
Is this from Drunk Viewings? Is that the joke?
It's just like, hey, I'm a little bit drunk and having a conversation with people. Let's talk about this movie and how I think it's super deep and all these things connect.
Yeah, so join us next week for 2001: A Space Odyssey and find out how it predicted. Everything I was going through my head super dark. I'm trying to think of something silly to say to make the joke be okay. How it predicted the double stuffed Oreo.
Yum. Those are vegan.
Oh, there you go. There you go. That must feel great that you can eat those.
I mean, it's, yeah. I do love Oreos.
Treat yourself. Hey, we don't have double stuffed here. I would love double stuff. The stuffing is the part I love.
I'm kind of a fan of the thin ones.
The thin ones are good. We do have the thin ones. Those are nice to munch on, but
yeah,
I do love the stuffing.
I like the wafer part too.
I got a big Oreo cake thing just before Christmas as part of like a Christmas treat to myself. It was nice.
I don't think I can eat the cakes, but I can eat the Oreos.
You know, but once I had cake, it was a nice treat. Anyway, that has been the show. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We'll remind you just briefly of patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. You want to support us over there with your monies and support us for free, but simply hitting the like button, subscribe, all that stuff. All of it really does help a lot. Tara, would you like to just promote something else that we do to the?
Make sure you watch our next episode. Also, we just we did our top 50 science fiction movies of all time. So if you're curious,
that's true.
Check that out.
Yeah, yeah. If this is one you've stumbled onto, yeah, just a couple of episodes ago we did a two-parter. It was both parts combined are about 5 hours long. So
I didn't, against my will. Yeah.
Against your will, you're the one who halfway through said next time we should do a top 100. That's what you said.
Yeah, but it should just be a list.
Just be like, oh, okay. Yeah, that's not how I roll.
Okay, then we should have a prepared script.
Okay. Oh yeah, you go and write a script for 100 movies. Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah. Movie in one line. Movie a minute. That's a thing.
Movie, okay. Speed round. All right, that's us. Thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching science fiction and computer. Add salsa.
Death. It's the new pornography.